You're watching World News Today. I'm Zainab Badawi. The government of Sweden has been threatened with legal action by the European Union after the Swedish authorities allowed wolf hunting to resume for a limited period. Hunters have been given 2 weeks to kill just 16 wolves. The government says the cull will reduce inbreeding, helping to create a sustainable native wolf population. However, environmentalists claim that won't be achieved by actually killing these animals. Matthew Price sent this report from central Sweden.
The hunters set out early, looking for signs of the wolf. Through the wilderness, on a hunt sanctioned by their government. In the snow, fresh tracks. They're getting close to their quarry. After dawn, we find a female moose killed by wolves.
So they have been here the last 2 hours, quite sure.
Within the last 2 hours?
Yes, within the last 2 hours.
The hunters don't like the animals. They kill their prey and sometimes their dogs.
We are not against a small number of wolves, we accept that, but there are too many here. I have 30,000 hectare hunting area and there are wolves everywhere.
Wolves aren't endangered, but in Sweden their numbers are small. The government says the limited cull will reduce inbreeding, ultimately creating a healthier population. Wolves used to be seen once upon a time right the way across this country, and yet by the 1960s they'd largely been wiped out. Thanks to conservation efforts, more and more are returning. There are almost 300 back in the wild now, and yet there are still people in this country who would like them all exterminated. For farmers, they can be a pest. 35 of the sheep on this farm have been killed by wolves over the years.
If the wolf takes the females, I didn't get any lambs and I don't get any money.
In Sweden, they've had to adapt to the natural environment. The fierce debate over wolves is forcing them to decide whether they need to do more to protect part of their natural heritage. At this meeting, we found them seeking a compromise between the hunters and farmers and the wolves.
It's a special thing to have wolves at the forest, to have the possibility to see and hear a wolf. That's something special. It wouldn't be the same without them.
Still, many argue that until the wolf can roam free across this land again, it will never be certain of survival here. Matthew Price, BBC News, Central Sweden.
Well, let's talk some more about this. I've been joined by Nils Solberg. He's head of the Norwegian People's Action Group for a new predator policy. He's in Norway and on webcam. And also with us is Joseph Hennon, who is spokesperson for the EU's Environment Commissioner. He's in our Brussels bureau. Joseph Hennon, the Swedish authorities have done their research. They say this is what they need to do. So do you doubt what they're saying? Why?
Well, in principle, we haven't received a management plan from the Swedish authorities which shows how they can restore the wolf population to favourable conservation status. They agree with us that the population is currently not at favourable status, and they haven't shown us in sufficient detail how, by killing this number of wolves, that they can achieve their stated objective. So they need to show to us how this will work, and they need to show a comprehensive management plan as to what they're going to do to replace the wolves and how they're going to improve the genetic coefficient and how they're going to migrate wolves. So really we have the same interests here. We want to restore the wolf population to favourable status. It's a question at the moment about whether the Swedish government is going about it the right way and whether we can accept their plans as being within EU environmental law, because that's what this is all about. All right. Sweden and many other countries have accepted the Habitats Directive.
All right, Nils Solberg, why do you believe these wolves do need to be culled in Sweden, just looking at your own experiences in Norway?
In my opinion, the wolves in Norway and Sweden, they are not endangered. The wolf are a wolf from a population of more than 50,000 wolves in the border belt in Norway, Sweden, Finland and Russia. They're definitely not inbreeding. I think the EU commissioner said talk about inbreeding. I think it's more talk about politics and then inbreeding and biology.
So just make it clear, you want a new predator policy, and I know Norway's not part of the European Union, but nevertheless, what do you see that's wrong with what the EU is saying? I mean, what Joe Hennon just stated seems to be quite reasonable, doesn't it?
Yeah, the Norwegian, we are not the members of the European Union, and I think we want to keep it like this. When we heard about the wolf management from EU too, and I think that the Scandinavian wolf scientists are the best in the world, and they can manage the wolf population excellent without help from the EU.
Well, Joe Hennon, there you've got it. I mean, you've got non-EU countries involved here, also Russia, Finland and Sweden, obviously parts of the EU. Why is the EU threatening Sweden with legal action before you've actually heard what they plan to do? Because you just said you're waiting for the Swedes to come with a reasonable proposal for you.
Yeah, well, this case has been going on for a couple of years already. Last year, Sweden didn't have a licensed hunt. The year before it did. And the EU started the steps towards legal procedures against Sweden 2 years ago. So we've been in debate and discussion with the Swedish authorities since then. They announced this hunt last week, basically, and they said that this wouldn't be a licensed hunt in the sense that it was 2 years ago, but it would be what they called a selective hunt.
OK, but Joe Hennon, on the face of it, killing 16 wolves doesn't sound like a huge number, does it? Briefly.
Well, the problem is the Habitats Directive doesn't allow you to kill protected species unless you've got a particular reason for doing so. One of those reasons could be to protect livestock or people, but you have to identify the wolves. In this case, Sweden has said they want to improve the gene pool. It's Sweden that admits that the gene coefficients are too low.
All right, Nils Solberg, briefly, we heard a member of the farming community in Sweden there saying these wolves, they're predators, they kill our animals. What generally do local communities who live amongst these wolves, what do they say? Just very quickly, if you would.
Yeah, we have a really big problem with these Russian wolves in Norway and Sweden right now. They are killing our livestock, they are killing our family dogs. For the last few years, they have killed more than 150 dogs. And it's a really, really big problem out in the communities.
All right, Nils Solberg and Joe Hennon, thanks very much for exploring both sides of the argument there on that proposed wolf cull by Sweden.